There is a moment in every life where power doesn't arrive with noise, applause, or permission. It arrives quietly. It arrives the second you realize that not everyone deserves continued access to you. Most people think power is about adding more skills, more money, more discipline, more connections. But the truth is darker and far more uncomfortable. Power comes from subtraction, from cutting, from knowing exactly who must disappear from your life if you are ever going to become the person you secretly know you could be. And the reason this is so hard is because the most dangerous people are rarely obvious enemies. They are familiar, they are close, they sound supportive, they smile while draining you. They don't stab you in the front, they slowly bleed you out while pretending to care. And unless you learn the art of the silent cut, you will stay trapped, not because you are weak, but because you are surrounded. The first person you must ghost is the one who only supports you in theory. This person loves the idea of your potential, but becomes uncomfortable the moment you actually move toward it. They'll say things like, "I believe in you," but follow it with subtle delays, doubts, and distractions. They never outright stop you. They just slow you down. They question your timing. They ask if you're sure. They remind you of risks when you're already aware of them. This person feeds on staying just ahead of you or just beside you, but never behind you. The moment your growth threatens their position in your life, their energy shifts. They don't clap louder when you win. They get quieter, more distant, more critical. This isn't coincidence. This is fear. And if you keep them around, you'll unconsciously adjust your pace to keep them comfortable. You'll shrink your ambition just enough so the relationship survives. That trade costs more than you think. The second person is the emotional leech, disguised as loyalty. This is someone who constantly needs you, needs your reassurance, needs your time, needs your presence, needs your energy. They frame it as closeness, but it's dependency. Every conversation is about their problems, their stress, their chaos. And you listen because you're capable, empathetic, and strong. But strength without boundaries becomes self-destruction. Over time, you begin associating your own growth with guilt. You feel bad focusing on yourself because they are always falling apart. And here's the uncomfortable truth. Some people stay broken because your attention rewards it. The moment you pull away, they accuse you of changing, of becoming cold, of forgetting where you came from. But power requires distance from constant emotional noise. You cannot hear your own thoughts while carrying someone else's weight every day. The third person is the habitual skeptic, not the honest critic, not the constructive challenger, but the one who instinctively looks for why something won't work. They pride themselves on being realistic, on being grounded, on being the voice of reason. But listen closely, they rarely build anything themselves. They are experts in hesitation, not execution. Their identity is built around avoiding embarrassment and minimizing risk. And because of that, they unconsciously project their limitations onto you. Every idea you bring becomes a problem to solve instead of a possibility to explore. Over time, their doubt becomes your internal voice. You start censoring yourself before you even speak. That is how power dies quietly, not through failure, but through constant preemptive surrender. The fourth person is the one who knew you before you decided to change and refuses to update their image of you. They remember the old version, the insecure version, the reckless version, the version that tolerated less and accepted crumbs. And no matter how much you grow, they speak to that ghost. They bring up old mistakes as jokes. They remind you who you used to be when you assert yourself. They aren't necessarily malicious, but they are anchored to a past that no longer exists. And if you keep entertaining that version of yourself for their comfort, you will never fully step into the new one. Power demands that you outgrow environments that only recognize you at your lowest. The fifth person is subtle and dangerous. It's the comfortable companion, the one you don't argue with, the one you don't feel challenged by, the one who makes life easy, predictable, and familiar. Comfort is not evil, but prolonged comfort without growth is sedation. This person doesn't push you forward or pull you back. They keep you exactly where you are. Conversations repeat. Days blur together. Dreams are discussed but never acted on, and you mistake peace for progress. But deep down, something in you is rotting. You feel it late at night, a quiet frustration, a sense that you are capable of more, but somehow stuck. This person is not holding you hostage. You are choosing stagnation because it feels safe, and power requires the courage to disrupt safety in pursuit of meaning. The sixth person is the covert competitor. They never say it out loud, but everything is a comparison. Your wins trigger silence. Your losses trigger advice. They copy your moves while pretending they're unrelated. They ask questions not to understand you, but to measure themselves against you. This person keeps score internally, and when you surpass them, they withdraw. Not because they're hurt, but because their identity depended on being ahead. Keeping them close means constantly negotiating your own success so it doesn't threaten the balance. That negotiation drains ambition. True power has no room for unspoken competition in relationships that pretend to be supportive. And finally, the most painful cut of all, the person who only respects you when you are available, agreeable, and useful. The moment you say no, the moment you prioritize yourself, the moment you assert a boundary, their respect evaporates. They punish you with distance, guilt, or passive aggression. This person never loved you. They loved the version of you that was easy to access. And as long as you keep chasing their approval, your life will orbit around their needs instead of your purpose. Power begins the moment you stop negotiating your worth. Ghosting is not cruelty. It is clarity. You don't owe everyone an explanation for your evolution. Some chapters must end without closure, because closure invites negotiation. The silent cut is not about anger. It's about precision. You don't announce it. You don't dramatize it. You simply redirect your energy toward alignment. And as you do, something unsettling happens. You feel lonely for a while, because silence replaces noise. And in that silence, you finally hear yourself. That voice you've been drowning out with obligations, loyalty, and familiarity. And once you hear it, once you start moving in accordance with it, power stops feeling like something you chase and starts feeling like something you embody. Because the strongest people are not surrounded by many. They are surrounded by the right few, and they were willing to walk away from everyone else to become them. If this analysis has sharpened your perspective until here, leave a like to mark your position and subscribe to ensure you are prepared for the next ascent. Let's continue. Selves fully. And here is the part no one warns you about. After the cuts are made, after the silence settles, you will feel exposed. Without the familiar faces, without the constant feedback, without the emotional anchors, you will feel naked inside your own life. That vulnerability is not weakness. That is the raw state where power is forged. Most people rush to refill the emptiness. They reconnect. They compromise. They return to old patterns just to escape the discomfort. And that single decision is why they stay average forever. Because the gap between who you were and who you are becoming must exist long enough to reshape you. When you remove the wrong people, you remove the mirrors that reflected an outdated version of you, and suddenly you don't know who you are anymore. That's terrifying. But it's also freedom, because now you get to decide. Now your thoughts are uninterrupted. Your goals stop being debated. Your instincts stop being questioned. This is where discipline stops being forced and starts becoming natural. You wake up earlier, not because someone inspired you, but because silence demands structure. You work longer, not because you're chasing validation, but because momentum feels sacred. You begin to respect your time because there are fewer people wasting it. Here's what power actually feels like when it starts to take shape. It's quiet. It's not hype. It's not constant confidence. It's a calm knowing that you no longer need approval to move. You stop explaining yourself. You stop defending your choices. You stop broadcasting plans. You move in private. And that privacy sharpens you. When no one knows what you're doing, no one can interfere. No one can plant doubt. No one can drain your excitement before it becomes real. This is why the most dangerous transformations happen silently. Loud change attracts resistance. Silent change creates inevitability. But make no mistake, the people you ghost will feel it, even if they never say a word. Energy shifts are louder than conversations. They'll sense your distance. They'll notice you're less available, less reactive, less invested in their chaos. Some will try to pull you back with nostalgia. Remember when we used to talk all the time? Remember how close we were? Others will test your boundaries with small requests. Just this once, just real quick. And this is the moment where most people fail, because holding a boundary feels mean when you're not used to power. You mistake firmness for cruelty. You mistake self-respect for selfishness. But every time you cave, you teach people that your evolution is negotiable. Understand this clearly. If your growth requires explanation, you are still asking for permission. Power does not ask. It moves. It adjusts. It lets consequences speak. And when you stay consistent, something fascinating happens. The right people start appearing, not in crowds, one by one, quietly. These are people who don't need access to drain you. They don't need to be entertained. They don't compete with you. They respect your time because they respect their own. Conversations feel clean, direct, purposeful. There is no tension, no subtle guilt, no emotional debt, just mutual elevation. But they only find you after you create the space. Nature abhors a vacuum, but it fills it with what matches the environment. If your environment is clarity, discipline, and self-respect, that's what arrives. Most people never experience this because they confuse being surrounded with being supported. They think having many people means they're valued. In reality, it often means they're accessible, useful, convenient. Power requires becoming less convenient, less reachable, less predictable. And that scares people who benefit from your consistency. They want you available, they want you responsive, they want you unchanged. Because your growth forces them to confront their stagnation. And rather than evolve, they try to anchor you. You need to recognize the internal resistance too. There will be moments when you miss the old dynamics, the jokes, the familiarity, the sense of belonging. Your mind will romanticize the past and conveniently forget the cost. This is where you must be ruthless with memory. Remember how drained you felt after certain conversations. Remember how motivated you were before sharing your plans and how deflated you felt after. Remember how often you delayed action because someone needed you emotionally. Nostalgia is selective. Power requires honesty. Another truth that cuts deep. Some people don't survive your silence because they were only connected to your noise. When you stop reacting, stop venting, stop over-explaining, there's nothing left for them to hold on to. And they fade, not because you pushed them away, but because there was never real alignment to begin with. This is not loss. This is revelation. You are seeing the relationship for what it always was. As your circle shrinks, your standards rise. You stop tolerating lateness. You stop accepting half effort. You stop chasing replies. You stop bending plans. And this spills into every area of your life. Your work sharpens. Your body responds. Your mind slows down. Anxiety decreases, not because life gets easier, but because your energy is no longer scattered. Focus is power, and focus is impossible when your attention is constantly being pulled by people who don't know where they're going. You will also notice something unsettling about yourself. You become less emotional around nonsense. Things that once triggered you barely register. Drama feels childish. Arguments feel pointless. This emotional neutrality is often misunderstood as coldness. It's not. It's control. You're no longer bleeding energy over things that don't move your life forward. And that control gives you leverage in conversations, in decisions, in negotiations. When you are not desperate to be liked, you become impossible to manipulate. Let's be clear. This path is not for everyone. Many people would rather stay connected than become powerful. They would rather be loved in small ways than respected in meaningful ones. And that's a choice. But if you feel that restless pressure inside you, that sense that you are wasting something important, that's not ambition. That's alignment trying to happen. And alignment demands sacrifice, not of morality, but of attachment. The silent cut is not a one-time event. It's a discipline. As you grow, new misalignments appear. New people enter your life who feel good but pull you off course. And you must be willing to choose yourself again and again, quietly, without speeches, without explanations. Because the strongest signal of power is not how many people stand next to you, but how well you move when you stand alone. And eventually, something shifts. You no longer fear being alone. Solitude becomes fuel. Silence becomes clarity. Your presence becomes heavier. When you speak, people listen because you don't speak often. When you commit, you follow through because there's nothing pulling you sideways. Your life starts to feel intentional instead of reactive. And the people who remain, the ones who walk with you now, they don't need constant access. They understand distance. They understand focus. They don't interpret boundaries as rejection. They see them as standards. This is the real transformation. Not becoming harder, but becoming clearer. Not isolating yourself from the world, but choosing your connections with precision. And once you taste this level of control over your energy, your time, and your direction, there is no going back. Because power is not loud. It does not announce itself. It is felt in the way you move, the way you decide, and the way you no longer hesitate when something no longer belongs in your life.